emotional dysregulation. So emotional dysregulation happens when you are so out of sync with your emotions, or your emotions are so out of control that you begin to have an inability to control your emotions, and they become completely dysregulated. That can look different for many people, and one of the ways that it can show up is hypervigilance. Hypervigilance just means that you are basically a people pleaser. You are hyper vigilant about what people say, feel, or think about you and what you're doing. So you become hyper fixated on every move that you make so that you can please the person or people that you are in front of. That is a way that you can check in with yourself to know that your emotions are dysregulated. Another way, and this is one of the biggest ways, and I know a lot of people sleep on this and immediately start to go to the doctor or the hospital, but when you start to feel chronic pain in your body, I understand that it's kind of like, well, I'm feeling pain, so how can my emotions cause pain? But what happens is trauma is stored in the body. So when you have a lot of emotional wounds, if you get to the point where you are dealing with a lot of emotional turmoil and you're not actually dealing with it, that builds up in your body. Your body is affected by your emotions, believe it or not. So when you do not deal with these emotions, then it can cause issues, and it can cause physical issues. It's not just emotional issues, it's not just spiritual issues, which is one of the big ones, but it can also cause, and usually does cause, physical issues, i.e. physical pain in the body. So when you start to feel chronic pain in your body, especially if you're to the point where you can't even figure out what it could be caused from, you're not doing any physical activities that can cause this, you're just going about your everyday life, usually it's due to a lot of emotional turmoil or a lot of stress that can cause emotional dysfunction. Another thing that looks like emotional dysregulation is when you are over explaining yourself, especially if you're a person who's usually like straight to the point and you don't really care, especially if you've done the research, you've done the work, and you know that you're right, or at least you know that you've done all that you can do, you've given it 110%. But then you find yourself still over explaining, trying to get your point across. That can be emotional dysfunction, emotional dysregulation, because you're at the point where you're caring too much about how this, whatever it is perceived. And that can also come across as perfectionism is another big one that I think a lot of people are struggling with when it comes to emotional dysregulation, because there are some people who are genuinely like type A personalities that like to have things a certain way, and you will not stop until it looks perfect for what you have envisioned for your life. If you're a visionary, you're narrow focus and you have your eyes set on the prize, that's a little different. I don't want to put that in emotional dysregulation, because that's a personality type. Not to say that it's good or bad, but that's a personality type that's different. But if you're a person who is not usually as caught up on the details, but you are finding yourself overwhelmed and stressed, and you're to the point where it's like you've tweaked it as much as you can tweak it, but you're still going and people are pointing it out to you, that is a sign of emotional dysregulation. So there are very many ways. Like I always say, you really need to know yourself, and you really need to find ways to check in with yourself. If you're not a person who knows like when to stop, or you're not a person who doesn't know when to slow down, or you don't have people in your life that are telling you, hey, I think you may need to take a break, take a vacation, then you need to have some kind of healthy pressures in your life that will remind you to check in. Start creating rituals for yourself, full moon rituals, spiritual rituals if you have to, or just regular like emotional check-ins, like journaling. You know what I'm saying? Like, you need to have ways to check in with yourself, because this is all about knowing yourself. If you don't know yourself, then it's easy to get into these situations and not be able to find your way out. So until you're completely burned out, until it's too late, until you're overwhelmed, until you have to get on medication. You know what I'm saying? So if you take your time, slow down, check in with yourself, have some healthy, measurable pressures in your life to tell you like, okay, I've done everything I needed to do up to this point. I've checked off the steps. I've weighed the pros and the cons. I saw how it can affect other people and myself most importantly. I've done all that I can do. If you've given 100% of what you can give, then whatever outcome, good or bad, is 100% of what it's supposed to be. If you've given 100%, and it didn't pan out the way you wanted to, you still gave it your all. That does not mean you failed. You still gave it your all. If you're dealing with any of these issues of emotional dysregulation, I advise you to check in with yourself, get grounded, do some journaling, seek professional help, check in with your friends, and take some time with yourself to figure these things out.